Have you been scouring the internet for days trying to decide between the 14-inch and the 16-inch MacBook Pro M1? It's a hard decision, and I did the same thing about half a year ago. I tested out both. I want to make sure that this is the last video you watch before you finally choose. So if you've seen these types of videos before, I'm going to give you 3 reasons why the 14-inch might be the best for you and 3 reasons why the 16-inch might be the best for you. Then I'll kind of go over the way you should think about it and how you should ultimately choose. So reason number 1 for the 14-inch MacBook M1 Pro, if traveling light is one of your primary goals. So the 14-inch weighs 3.5 pounds, while the 16-inch weighs 4.7. 1.2 pounds might not sound like a lot extra, but if you're carrying this around all day, hiking or just running around the city, it starts to feel like a lot, especially when traveling. You certainly feel all that extra weight. The longer you're walking around with this on your back, the more you're going to feel that weight. So that is something to consider. The 14-inch is also nearly 2 inches shorter when it's vertical in your backpack. So if you value having extra space in there, or maybe you have a smaller backpack, then the 14-inch might be a better choice for you. Secondly, this is a pretty big one. If you don't need that extra screen real estate, right? Trying to plan for all these future events that might happen or might not happen can be really stressful. But the reality is, if you don't get a lot of extra value from that extra screen space and size, you don't need it. So let me give you an example. If you're the type of person who never notices a huge difference between the experience of using a laptop with a smaller screen and a laptop with a bigger screen, or that difference doesn't benefit you in any way, then again, the 14-inch might be a solid choice. So how this comes into play with applications, right? If you're not using applications that require a ton of screen real estate, right? There's like tons of buttons, tons of settings, and it's really important that you see all of them at once, and it gets really annoying if you have to flip back and forth. Or say you're editing a video and you want the playback sort of rectangle in that video editing software to be big enough to see tiny details that you wouldn't necessarily need to see if you were on some other application on your laptop. But if you're just searching the web, maybe writing blog posts, writing notes, recording a song even, you don't necessarily need a bigger screen, and you're going to know that yourself pretty easily, whether that's a benefit you've noticed before. Of course, this assumes you've used laptops, computers with different screen sizes to sort of notice that difference. But even if you haven't, there's a way you can do that I'll talk about later in the video. When it comes down to it, whether screen size matters or not to you, use your intuition. This is something that you probably know, and you're probably leaning one way already. Number 3, if the best budget deal is what's most important to you. So the 14-inch refurbished comes in around $1,000. I got mine around like $950, almost down to $900, just buying it used on Amazon, which the links to that are in the description if you want to find good deals. That's a really, really good price for everything the 14-inch does. The 16-inch, if you're getting it refurbished, if you're getting whichever color, so there's, remember, the silver and space gray, if you're getting whichever color happens to be cheaper at the time based on supply and demand, then you can usually get that around $1,200. Right now even, I just checked, renewed. And the used prices don't really go down farther from there at all. Whereas the used prices on the 14-inch can go 100, sometimes more lower. So with the extra $200 between the 1,000 renewed and the 1,200 renewed means a lot to you, like if an extra $200 is a lot of money and you don't need the stuff I mentioned before, like the bigger screen, and you want, and portability is something that's really important to you, then the 14-inch is probably a better option. Even if you don't think $200 is necessarily killing the decision for you, maybe you want to spend some of that extra money that you save on a really cool case for your MacBook. For instance, I got this wooden case that, it's not actually wood, it's plastic, but it looks like wood, that I've gotten lots of compliments on. Or maybe you want to buy a USB hub, right? Because it's USB-C. You want to be able to plug a bunch of different stuff into it, maybe more monitors, whatever. And you want to buy accessories like that, or keyboard covers, or whatever the heck it is. And you want to have that extra money to play around with, right? Maybe you're working around a specific budget. In that case, the 14-inch might be the better choice for you. Now let's talk about the 16-inch. The 16-inch MacBook M1 Pro. I used both of these for months. I used the 14-inch for about 2 months, and I even traveled a little bit with it domestically. Did some road trip stuff, did some travel editing, all that. I made a video about that too, if you want to check it out. And then I've used the 16-inch for about 3.5 going on 4 months now. And I traveled with that for 30 days all around Europe. So I know exactly what it's like to travel with it as well, which I mentioned before could be one of the downsides from the 14-inch, but that depends. Reason number 1 why the 16-inch might be better for you: if you really prefer and notice the difference when you're working with a larger screen and it allows you to work more efficiently and more hassle-free. Or maybe it's even non-negotiable to you. I want a bigger screen, as big of one as I can afford, and it is really important to your workflow. For example, if you edit a lot of videos, that's something that I do, and I really value being able to have a good-sized playback screen while I'm messing around with all the other settings, and being able to see tiny details a lot better than with a 14-inch. Because you also have to remember, a 14-inch is only about 12 inches wide, whereas a 16-inch is only about 14 inches wide. I know it sounds kind of confusing, thing, but the inches nowadays actually refers to the diagonal and not the width. It used to, but it doesn't anymore, I guess for marketing purposes. So for me, being able to see all those extra details while video editing specifically made an enormous impact on my workflow. And remember, I tried both of these while traveling, and that honestly made up for the extra weight. I didn't even really notice the extra weight that much. So you have to think about, is $200 worth having a bigger screen to you? If just a bigger screen is enough to make it worth it, then this might be the right decision, because that's not even the only thing that's better about it. Honestly, for me, that extra $200 was worth it for just the bigger screen alone. I could tell just from using the 14-inch that I was missing that 16-inch. Even when I used it for months, that feeling didn't go away. I still felt like I needed a bigger screen. I knew what my needs were, and I was right. I returned it and got the 16-inch, and I didn't have the buyer's remorse anymore. I am more than happy sticking with the 16-inch for a very long period of time, because it doesn't leave me wanting anything. It doesn't leave me wanting a bigger screen or better speakers or more power, because it does all of that incredibly well. But maybe for you, if you were to buy and test the 14-inch, you would get that same feeling. You wouldn't feel any buyer's remorse. You wouldn't want a bigger screen unless someone else tells you that you need it. But remember, like, this is all about your intuition. You'll know which one it is you want immediately when testing it out. And you shouldn't settle for less, honestly, especially when it comes to like how much work you can get done and how efficiently. Because life is short and it's only an extra $200. If it was double the price, this would be a different story, which it used to be. So when it doesn't leave you wanting for more or wanting your money back, that's how you know it's a really good deal, because it's saving you money in the long run, not just in the short run, because you'll go longer without wanting to upgrade. Reason number 2, you need more powerhouse features, or you really benefit from them, right? Need is a strong word, such as faster rendering, better speakers, and anything that might require more RAM. If you're doing very intensive stuff, editing videos with multiple tracks, really big file sizes, maybe they're even all in 4K. Maybe you're editing drone footage. You have stuff overlaid on the top of other stuff. Maybe you're doing something else that requires a lot of processing power. Maybe you're coding projects that require tons of machine power. If you've ever done mobile development, running those simulators makes your computer like scream. So the extra power is really useful. Or maybe you're working on a lot of stuff that's building towards the future. Maybe you want to do machine learning models that are run locally on your system. Then you're definitely going to need that extra processing power. Another thing, like I mentioned, the speakers are way better, most noticeably in the bass, but that really makes a huge impact. It sounds like you're listening to audio from a TV screen when you're on the 16-inch. That's something I really noticed when I returned the 14-inch and got the 16-inch instead. The third reason the 16-inch might be the best for you is that the extra $200 doesn't seem that significant to you. Or more directly, it's worth all those extra features that I mentioned. Like if you would pay $200 to get all the extra stuff, and that sounds amazing. And moreover, if that's the difference between you not upgrading in a year or two, your system is so good, you use it for 5 years instead of 2, and then upgrading. You just save yourself a lot of money over the long term. So if that extra price doesn't mean that much to you, right? It's worth the bigger screen. It's worth the better speakers. It's worth the bigger trackpad that is more flexible. It's worth the better cooling and the system being a lot quieter when you're running it over long periods of time. And the extra size doesn't deter you at all, right? I'm a traveler. I travel a lot, more than most people, and it hasn't bugged me once. There's never been a time where I was like, man, I wish I brought a 14-inch instead because this is just so heavy. I felt that way about my tripod, but never about my laptop, because it was worth that extra load because of how much extra utility I got out of it. So if all those extra things don't deter you, but rather they all excite you and they're worth that extra price, and $200 isn't a ton of money for you, then this laptop is for you. If you do a lot of video editing, if you need all these extra features, they make your life easier, they make you happier, they make it so you're more likely to stick with this laptop for longer, then it's definitely worth the extra price. And for me, it was the right choice. There was no question about it, even though I spent weeks researching which one was better. The exact versions I bought of both of these are actually in the description below if you want to check those out. Really good deals there. 30-day hassle-free return if you are second guessing it at all. So there's really little risk here. So just to summarize, the 14-inch is for the enthusiasts who may value being a bit more minimalist. They don't need all this extra stuff. They think it's all just for show. They don't need a powerhouse machine. And the 14-inch is already really powerful by itself, honestly. And they don't need a bigger screen at all. That's honestly the biggest factor here. They don't need a bigger screen, period. And they don't feel like they're missing out when they don't have one. The 16-inch is for those who want the most power that still fits in a backpack. They love the great speakers. They do work that requires or really benefits from having a bigger screen. And they value being a little bit more future-proof down the road. Maybe when their workload does get more complicated in the future, right? They don't want to have to return to sell the laptop to get something that fits their needs later when they already have it. They just saved all that money and they won't have to go through the hassle of reselling the one they have and losing money. They won't have to deal with any of that. So if you're still undecided, I would really recommend you just do what I did. Get both, or maybe get one. Get the cheaper one, the 14-inch, and then test it. And if you really feel like you're missing out, just return it and get the 16-inch. Or you could buy both of them at the same time and then test them both out at the same time for a few days and just return the one you don't want. It's really easy with the hassle-free returns they have these days, under 30 days. I hope I helped to make the decision a lot easier for you. You don't have to go watching a bunch more of these videos to make the choice for you. Because really testing it out is going to be the ultimate factor if for some reason you still don't know right now. But hopefully you know, because of all that info I just threw at you. The 16-inch was the best choice for me, and I have no regrets, and there's honestly no other laptop that I would rather be using. Thanks so much for watching the video. See you next time. Peace.